Hey guys, tonight as you settle in and let your thoughts soften, you're invited to drift far away, not into the far reaches of the galaxy, but backward through the quiet corridors of time. It's easy to imagine that somewhere out there, far above the roofs of your house and the clouds rolling over the world, other eyes might be looking down. Maybe they always have. Maybe they once came to visit, or so the stories say. For centuries, people have looked at the pyramids rising from the Egyptian desert, the massive stones of Stonehenge standing like ancient teeth against the British sky, or the long lines drawn into the dry earth of Peru. And they've wondered, could ordinary people thousands of years ago really have done this all by themselves? Wouldn't it feel better if the answer were no? Instead, we'll wander slowly through the real past, the dusty, hard, clever, and very human work that left us these wonders. You might picture the thousands of hands that lifted stones, the thousands of feet that wore paths into the dirt, the quiet stories told under flickering fires. None of them needed spaceships or starmen, just people with simple tools, deep fears, and endless patience. We'll see how ingenuity, sweat, fear, faith, and sheer determination built the pyramids stone by stone. How people who didn't have the wheel could shape giant rocks and line them up with the stars. But of patience, calloused hands, and the quiet hum of stories told beside fires long since gone out. And if you stay with me, you'll hear how those stories shaped our world, one stone, one line, one whisper at a time. Maybe they are. Or maybe the real wonder is that we have each other, our stories, and the night sky we share. That is mystery enough. Tonight, they shine for you too. And that's all the wonder you need. You don't have to figure out the secrets of the pyramids tonight. You don't need to chase UFOs through the dark corners of old paintings. Just listen as we wander backward through dust and myth, back to a time when people dreamed big enough to lift mountains with no alien help at all. How farmers, priests, and workers left behind marks that we sometimes mistake for alien messages, when in truth, they were signs to the sky, to gods, or just to each other. But before you get nice and comfortable, take a moment of your precious time and like and subscribe to the video, because it helps the channel a lot. Also comment down below, what time is it for you, and where are you watching from? It is always fascinating seeing from what part of the world you guys are. There is something endlessly comforting about believing that we're not alone, that our ancestors weren't alone either. We'll start with the first spark, the moment someone looked at a pyramid and thought, no way people did this. Then we'll trace how that doubt became a myth. We'll visit the quarry ramps, the crude hammers, the back-breaking labor camps. We'll stand by the giant geoglyphs on the desert floor and imagine people walking them, step by step, in rituals we can only half guess at. We'll all listen to the wind tell old truths, that humans can do astonishing things when they believe the stars are watching. It's not hard to see why the idea sticks. The world feels wide, mysterious, and heavy with secrets we half remember in dreams. If the evidence of visitors from the stars is right there in plain sight, in carved stones, hidden tunnels, or cryptic symbols, then maybe our place here is part of something bigger. Maybe we were chosen, or helped, or watched over. Maybe we aren't just small creatures scratching at the dirt, but instead part of a grand cosmic story that began before we were born and will continue long after we are gone. And so the myth of ancient aliens was born, not only in old fireside stories, but in books and television shows that feed our hunger for the uncanny. These stories promise that under every stone lies a clue, a carving of a flying saucer, a god in a helmet that looks suspiciously like an astronaut's visor, a blueprint for a machine no human could have made alone. They make us wonder and keep us awake, turning questions over in the quiet dark. But tonight, we won't be hunting for little green men in the cracks of old monuments. As you listen, you might feel your mind drift to places you then never stood. The hot sun over Giza, The cold dawn on the Salisbury Plain, the whispering winds that sweep over Nazca's lonely desert. Tonight's journey is not a loud adventure, but a calm unraveling. At the end, you might still wonder if somewhere out there, someone is watching you now. Some distant presence drifting through the galaxies, curious about your soft breathing as you sleep. So tuck yourself deeper under the blanket. Feel the bed beneath you, solid and comforting like stone under the desert sun. Let your eyelids grow heavy. This is the boring truth behind the myth of ancient aliens. A truth made not of spaceships and starmen. Close your eyes. The sky is wide and old. The stars above you are the same ones that shone down on builders, farmers, and dreamers thousands of years ago. Slip a little deeper under the covers. Let your shoulders relax as we drift back through time, not to the age of the pharaohs just yet, but to a much more recent moment when the seeds of ancient alien ideas were first sown. Because, contrary to what some might believe, the people who stacked the pyramids didn't tell stories of beings from the stars. That came much later, whispered into the curious ears of the modern world. Picture the late 19th century. Europe is alive with the buzz of Egyptomania. Explorers in dusty hats tug at ropes, pulling secrets out of the sands along the Nile. Newspapers in London and Paris thrill their readers with wild tales of golden coffins and rooms, full of forgotten kings. It was an age of discovery, but also an age of deep arrogance, a belief that the people who came before us, especially people from distant lands, couldn't possibly have been as clever as we are now. So when Western visitors looked at the Great Pyramid of Giza, that monumental stack of limestone blocks, rising taller than the spires of their churches, they sometimes refused to believe that ancient Egyptians did it alone. How could farmers, with no engines, no steel cranes, no modern blueprints, have dragged 2 million blocks into place? The question wasn't really about physics. It was about pride. Some could not accept that non-Europeans in loincloths had once built something that humbled modern cities. In this gap between wonder and arrogance, the first whispers of impossible builders crept in. At first, the rumors were gentle. Stories of lost civilizations, maybe Atlantis, maybe some mythical race of giants who shaped the stones and then vanished into the sands. No aliens yet, but the stage was set. The idea that human history must have hidden helpers had begun its slow climb into popular imagination. Fast forward to the 20th century, the age of rockets, moon landings, and Cold War anxieties. People were suddenly looking at the stars with new eyes. Flying saucers buzzed across the pages of pulp magazines. Sci-fi writers spun tales of ancient astronauts who visited Earth when people still wore skins and lit fires in caves. Then, in 1968, came a single book that cracked the door wide open. Chariots of the Gods by Erich von Däniken. If you've ever seen a documentary about ancient aliens, you have von Däniken to thank or blame for it. His book wasn't the first to imagine star visitors in the distant past, but it was the one that turned a fringe idea into a phenomenon. Von Däniken asked tantalizing questions that many readers wanted to hear. How could the pyramids be aligned so perfectly with the stars? Why did so many cultures build similar step structures? Pyramids in Egypt, ziggurats in Mesopotamia, temples in Mesoamerica. Could all these ancient people really have done it alone? Or did someone show them how? His answers were rarely concrete, and his evidence often flimsy. Misread carvings, mistranslated legends, misunderstood astronomy. But the questions stuck. They fed a deep human hunger to believe we were never alone. Suddenly, the idea of ancient aliens wasn't just a niche curiosity. It was a household conversation. Television picked it up. Magazines ran lurid covers of astronauts shaking hands with pharaohs. Ancient statues with tall headdresses were reimagined as space helmets. Mysterious lines carved into rocks were claimed to be ancient landing strips. Never mind that the real explanations, ritual paths, astronomical alignments, clever engineering, were there if you bothered to look. The myth was more fun than the facts. As von Däniken's ideas spread, so did pushback from real archaeologists and historians. They pointed out how disrespectful these theories were to the people who actually built the wonders we marvel at today. Saying aliens made the pyramids steals credit from the thousands of laborers who chiseled limestone in the blistering sun, the architects who measured stars with simple tools, the priests who tied every stone to prayers and ritual. The pyramids didn't need spaceships. They needed humans, driven by faith, fear, and the power of a king's word. Yet the whispers never really went away. Every few years, new TV shows revive the old questions, presenting mystery as proof. They show giant stone heads on Easter Island and ask if ordinary islanders could really have moved them. They point to the Nazca lines, vast drawings in the desert only visible from above, and claim they must be alien airfields. They rarely mention the simple truth. People can do remarkable things with ropes, wooden rollers, and collective belief. Why do we keep wanting aliens to be part of our past? Maybe because it makes the past feel as big and strange as the universe itself. Maybe because it comforts us to think that we were noticed, chosen, and helped by minds greater than our own. Or maybe, deep down, it frightens us more to admit that the people before us were just as clever as we are, that they had the same brains, the same stubborn will, the same restless spark to build something bigger than themselves. So the next time you see a special on ancient aliens, remember the first whisper. It wasn't spoken by a pharaoh under a desert moon, or carved in secret symbols on limestone walls. It was born in the imaginations of people who wanted the world to feel even stranger than it already was. And who didn't always trust the power of ordinary human hands? And tonight, as you breathe slowly and feel your eyes grow heavier, think of those hands. Rough with calluses, steady with purpose, lifting stone after stone under the searing sun. No saucers hovering overhead, no starmen guiding the way. Just people not so different from you, carving their mark on the world, and leaving behind mysteries so grand that we still can't help but dream of the stars. Settle back in now. You've drifted through the whispers and the wild ideas. Now it is time to sink deeper under the weight of stone and sun, to where the truth rests patiently, like a hidden chamber waiting to be found. Forget the flying saucers for a while. Let's stand in the dust and the heat of the Giza Plateau, nearly 5,000 years ago, and see what it truly took to build something that would outlast every king and conqueror who ever looked upon its face. The Great Pyramid of Giza, known to its builders as Khufu's Horizon, rose on a patch of desert bedrock overlooking the slow, timeless drift of the Nile. It began not with alien blueprints, but with human ambition. The dream of a single man, Pharaoh Khufu, who wanted his name to echo forever in stone. But dreams alone did not stack 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing as much as 2 small cars. For that, you needed people, thousands upon thousands of them. Imagine the dawn on that plateau. Before the sun blazed down, the workers would gather at the base of the rising pyramid. They were not slaves chained and whipped under a cruel sun. That is another myth that has lingered too long. Archaeologists have found workers' villages, their bread ovens, their simple beds, even their graffiti casual doodles praising their work gangs with names like the Friends of Khufu or the Drunkards of Menkaure. They were paid laborers, farmers mostly, who came when the Nile flooded their fields, leaving them nothing to do but wait for the waters to recede. They came in shifts, tens of thousands of them, swelling the dusty plateau into a living, pounding city of wood, rope, copper chisels, and sweat. Teams quarried limestone from nearby cliffs, using pounding stones and wooden wedges soaked in water to crack the rock. Harder granite came from far to the south, floated downriver on huge boats when the Nile was high. Each stone was carved by hand, shaped by men who knew every tap of the mallet, every flake of dust that curled away in the dry air. And then came the hauling, the part that still boggles the modern mind. How do you drag blocks that weigh 2 tons each up a slope taller than a 40-story building? Not with alien beams of anti-gravity, but with cleverness and muscle. Recent discoveries and experiments tell us they likely used massive ramps made of mud brick and limestone chippings, sloping up and around the rising pyramid like a coiled snake. Wooden sledges were loaded with stone, then dragged by teams of men pulling in unison. Ancient wall paintings even show workers pouring water on the sand ahead of the sledges. Wet sand reduces friction, turning an impossible drag into a task that, while backbreaking, could be done. Every block placed was a moment of exquisite calculation. The base of the Great Pyramid is almost perfectly level, deviating by less than an inch across its entire footprint. Its sides align almost perfectly to the cardinal points, north, south, east, west, guided not by alien star maps, but by simple tools, sight lines, plumb bobs, and a keen knowledge of the night sky. When dusk fell over Giza, the same stars that sparkle above you tonight guided their builders. They did not need visitors from other worlds. They needed clear skies and patient eyes. Inside the pyramid, the story is even more astounding. The Grand Gallery, a vast sloping passage, was shaped with such precision that the blocks fit together without mortar. Huge granite beams were slid into place to protect the burial chamber from collapse, balanced delicately to distribute the crushing weight above. There are hidden chambers too, some discovered only in the last few decades by scanning the pyramid's mass with cosmic rays. Not spaceships, just brilliant ancient engineers, using empty pockets of air to lighten the load. And while the pyramid rose, so did its people's lives revolve around it. The workers were housed in rows of barracks, just a short walk from the site. They ate bread and onions, drank beer, the staple of Egyptian workers, and sang songs of praise for their crews. Some left marks behind, scrawled on stones like signatures on history. The vigorous gang, the enduring ones of Khufu. To stand among those graffiti today is to stand in the breath of the builders themselves. Ordinary people who wanted to be remembered, even if only by each other. For decades, scholars argued about whether slaves did this labor. The truth, now uncovered by archaeology, is more humane and inspiring. These were not chained men forced under a whip, but Egyptians working for wages, food, and pride in their king's eternal monument. They were drafted for months at a time, rotating in and out like soldiers on campaign. The pyramid fed entire families, not just with wages, but with the prestige of saying, "I helped build the king's house of eternity." The Great Pyramid rose in less than 3 decades. When the last stone settled into place, its white limestone casing gleamed in the sun, so bright it must have looked like a star fallen to earth. For 1,000 years, it stood clad in that polished skin until time and earthquakes stripped it bare, leaving the stepped core that tourists see today. No saucers, no alien architects, just sunburnt men with rope burns on their hands, lifting the weight of a god's dream one block at a time. So tonight, as you lie there letting your breath slow and your eyelids grow heavy, picture that scene. Not the fantasy of silver ships descending with humming beams, but the hush of the desert at dawn, the shuffle of sandals on stone, the grunt of men heaving sledges through sand darkened by water, the soft chant of a foreman counting time, the rhythmic slap of rope against rough palms. All around them, the vast hush of the desert, the same stars we see tonight, watching them watch back. Under those stones, the true story lies waiting. A story not of visitors from the stars, but of what people can do when they stand together, dream impossibly big, and give everything they have to make the impossible real. Sleep now, knowing the truth, that the greatest wonder ever built was built by hands not so different from yours. So you're lying there now, drifting between the ancient sands in the quiet corners of your room. And maybe a thought flickers across your mind, like a whisper of wind across stone. If we know so much about how the pyramids were built, the quarries, the ramps, the gangs of men hauling stone under a burning sun, why does the idea of aliens building them still cling so stubbornly to us? Why, after all these years, does the myth glow brighter in the shadows than the truth, polished and clear in the sun? Close your eyes and let's wander back. Not 5,000 years this time, but just a few decades ago, to the living rooms and library basements of the 20th century. The first seeds of the ancient aliens myths sprouted when the world felt smaller but also more mysterious. People flipped through dusty National Geographic magazines or squinted at grainy black and white photos of the Great Pyramid and saw something that seemed so big, so perfectly ordered, so impossibly old that surely humans alone couldn't have done it. It didn't help that the modern world often underestimated ancient people. Western explorers stood at the base of the pyramids, peering up through the desert heat waves, and found it easier to believe in little green men than in generations of clever, coordinated human labor. How could farmers with copper chisels and ropes pull off such a feat? Weren't they primitive? The myth took root in the cracks left by a lack of respect, a disbelief in what human hands, backs, and minds can do when given enough time and a dream bigger than life. And so came the books, dusty paperbacks with lurid covers. Chariots of the Gods by Eric Vaughan. Deniken became a runaway bestseller in the late 1960s. Its pages dripped with speculation. Were the pyramids landing pads for alien ships? Were pharaohs descended from star gods? Were all the colossal wonders of the ancient world secret messages from visitors beyond the stars? The questions were posed breathlessly, with just enough facts sprinkled among wild leaps to make it feel like revelation rather than invention. The answers, conveniently, were left to your imagination, because the questions themselves were so deliciously impossible to prove or disprove. Television got in on it too. By the time the 1970s rolled around, documentaries and late-night talk shows made ancient astronauts a household phrase. Grainy footage of stone carvings was paired with ominous music, and smooth-voiced narrators asked, could it be? The seeds sprouted vines, and they spread through pop culture. Pyramids and UFOs became tangled together in posters on college dorm walls, in paperbacks passed hand to hand like secret knowledge. And beneath it all was a comforting thrill. Because to believe that aliens built the pyramids is, in a way, to make the world bigger and stranger than it seems. If a race of beings once crossed the black oceans of space to help us stack stone on stone, then maybe they're still out there, watching, ready to come back. Maybe we're not alone. Maybe the universe brims with secrets we haven't found yet. The stones become more than stones. They become a message that we are part of something vast and cosmic, something that lifts us out of the ordinary grind of soil and sweat and sunburned laborers dragging sledges uphill. But belief is a double-edged thing. There's wonder in the myth, but there's something sad underneath it too. To cling to the story that aliens did it is in a quiet way. To rob ourselves of the real magic, the breathtaking truth that ordinary people with ordinary tools did something that still leaves us speechless 5 millennia later. They needed no ships from Sirius, no anti-gravity beams, no galactic blueprints etched on the walls of secret tombs. They needed only rope, stone, and the unshakable will to carve eternity from the desert's edge. When archaeologists dig deeper into this myth, they often find more than just questions about technology. They find echoes of something darker, a trace of prejudice that lingers like dust. Too often, the ancient alien theories pop up when the builders were not European. The pyramids of Egypt, the giant stone heads of Easter Island, the intricate lines of Nazca etched into the desert of Peru. Again and again, the same quiet insult. They couldn't have done this on their own. The myth can become a way to deny the genius and grit of people whose stories were never written by the victors. Yet even when the evidence piles high, the tools, the workers' graffiti, the unfinished quarries where half-carved stones still lie like frozen echoes of a forgotten shift, the myth endures. Maybe because humans love a good mystery more than we love the slow, dry truth. The truth demands patience and respect. It demands we crawl through rubble, translate fragile scrolls, piece together broken pottery shards. The myth just needs a single question, softly whispered into the dark. What if? And maybe, in some gentle corner of the mind, we want to believe because it's comforting to think someone is out there, watching over us. If the pyramids were landing beacons, then maybe we too are not abandoned on this tiny blue speck. Maybe one day, those ancient visitors will come back to explain themselves, to pat us on the back for surviving this far. Maybe the stones hold a promise that the universe once reached out to us and might again. So here we are tonight, floating somewhere between the known and the unknown. The stones stand silent in the desert still, bathed in moonlight that turns them ghostly white. Tourists flock to them every day, cell phones raised to catch a piece of eternity. Guides tell stories both true and not. Somewhere, a tired old paperback about star gods still sits on a shelf, its pages yellowing and its questions forever unanswered. And perhaps that's the softest truth of all, that we are creatures who dream. That we look up at the pyramids and see not just blocks of limestone stacked with sweat and rope, but a mirror for our deepest hopes and hidden fears. That we long for a story bigger than ourselves. The real story is bigger, but not because of spaceships. It is bigger because it shows what people can do when they choose to build something that will outlast storms, empires, and the centuries themselves. So if you find your mind drifting tonight toward the stars, that's all right. If you find yourself hoping that, maybe, just maybe, someone once crossed light years to stand in the desert and whisper secrets to the builders, that is all right too. The truth doesn't banish wonder. It expands it. It reminds us that we are our wonder makers, capable of raising stones toward the sky, not because someone told us how, but because we dared to try. Let the myths drift through you like a warm breeze over the dunes. Let the truth settle beside them, a soft companion that asks for no spotlight, only your quiet respect. Outside your window, the same stars the pyramid builders once watched still shine, unchanged by our stories. Somewhere beyond those stars, maybe someone is watching. But here, under your blanket, it's enough to know that once, under a scorching sun and a sweep of wind, people stood together on a patch of desert and built forever with their hands. Sleep now and dream of stones and stars and the beautiful, impossible things people can do. It is one thing to stand beneath the glaring sun and look up at the Great Pyramid as ancient, jagged silhouette, but it's another entirely to imagine what's hidden deep within, where the light has never touched. If the stones themselves give birth to the alien myths, the hidden rooms inside breathe life into them every time another dark corridor is found. And tonight, as you settle deeper under your blanket, we slip into those narrow shafts and lost chambers, the ones that conspiracy storytellers say hold the final proof that the builders of the pyramids were not from this earth. Since the earliest days, rumors of secret chambers have wrapped themselves around the Great Pyramid like desert sand caught in its corners. Even the ancient Greeks, who visited 2,000 years after Khufu's reign, whispered about passages leading down into the underworld, or up into the sky. They marveled that a king's tomb could be buried so deep inside so much stone, guarded by passageways that twist like riddles. But they also wondered, why so many shafts? So many false doors? So many rooms that seem to go nowhere? These strange architectural dead ends are the fertile soil where alien conspiracies grow. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, European explorers crawled through the pyramid's cramped tunnels with flickering lamps. They scratched notes on paper by candlelight, tracing narrow shafts that climbed at awkward angles from the king's chamber and the so-called queen's chamber. Shafts too small for a person to crawl through, but too carefully constructed to be accidental. To the ordinary archaeologist, these shafts were practical, maybe air vents or symbolic passages for the pharaoh Isol to fly to the stars, specifically to Orion, spelt which the ancient Egyptians linked to Osiris, the god of the afterlife. But for those who yearned for a wilder truth, these shafts were more than air holes. They were the keys to a cosmic lock. Some believe these tiny passageways were meant for something more, channels for communication with beings beyond the stars. In the soft hush of a late-night documentary or the pages of an old fringe science book, you'll hear it whispered. What if these were energy conduits? What if the pyramid itself was a giant machine, humming with frequencies we've long forgotten? A beacon or perhaps a receiver, drawing signals down from a mothership orbiting Earth millennia ago. It sounds fantastical, but that's the lure. These empty tunnels that modern robots still crawl through with blinking cameras, hoping for the next secret door. In the early 2000s, a tiny robotic rover was sent to explore a shaft in the Queen's chamber, too narrow for any human to squeeze through. The rover bumped along for dozens of meters until it found something incredible. A tiny limestone door set with copper handles. A door inside a shaft inside a pyramid. A door that nobody expected. A door that shouldn't even exist. When news of this so-called Gantenbrink's door broke, the alien theorists pounced. To them, it was proof. The pyramid held more than dusty stone. Maybe behind that slab lay the final secret, a hidden room lined with ancient technology, or blueprints etched into walls by beings who crossed the stars. Maybe it was a chamber, storing power sources we can't yet understand. If the Great Pyramid was more than a tomb, if it was a machine, then this door was the keyhole. When engineers finally drilled a tiny hole through that limestone slab, they pushed a camera through the gap like a curious insect. And on the other side, another small chamber, ending in another stone block. No golden treasures, no shimmering alien relics. Just more stone, more mystery. Enough mystery to keep the myth alive for decades more. Why do these chambers tug at our imagination so powerfully? Perhaps because a locked door is an invitation. The human mind hates not knowing, and a sealed space deep in the world's most iconic monument is like an itch we can't scratch. For alien believers, each sealed chamber is one more chance that the truth is still waiting, just out of reach. In 2017, the excitement flared again when scientists using cosmic ray scans, a technique called muography, detected what they called a void above the grand gallery of the Great Pyramid. It has an empty space about 30 meters long, big enough to be called a hidden chamber. What lies inside? Stones, air, or something that rewrites history? Mainstream archaeologists shrug and say it's likely just a structural gap, a byproduct of how the pyramid was built to shift weight away from passageways below. But to the ancient alien theorists, it's more than an empty pocket. It's a hidden vault, maybe the final piece that ties Earth's greatest stone puzzle to the stars above. Over the years, some have spun even grander ideas. Maybe these chambers hold the Hall of Records, a mythical archive said to contain secrets of humanity's true origins, left behind by an advanced race that uplifted primitive humans thousands of years ago. The idea echoes through New Age books and late-night radio shows that under the Sphinx or deep inside the pyramid lies a stone library, guarded for millennia, waiting to be opened when humanity is ready. The truth is probably simpler, yet no less wondrous. These hidden chambers, these unfinished passageways, these strange shafts that lead to nowhere, all reveal the messy, human side of a grand vision. They hint at redesigns mid-project, at builders experimenting with ways to shift weight, at pharaohs changing their minds, at mistakes and solutions carved in limestone. They show us ancient Egypt as a place alive, with real people who made choices, who tested ideas, who learned as they built toward the sky. But conspiracy loves an empty space. The less we know for certain, the more room there is for stories to creep in and take root in the dark. And so, every robot sent into a shaft, every radar scanned through stone walls, every new void detected by particle physics, becomes another log on the fire that keeps the alien pyramid myth flickering. So tonight, as you lie there, imagine yourself as a tiny scarab beetle, slipping through a hairline crack in the pyramid's cool stone. You crawl through the narrow shaft, the air stale but timeless. Ahead, the walls close in, but suddenly, a gap opens into a hidden chamber no living soul has seen for thousands of years. Inside, the air tastes like dust and secrets. There are no blinking consoles, no alien thrones. Just stone, silence, and the echo of your own heartbeat. But maybe that's enough. Maybe the mystery itself is the treasure. Maybe the belief that we are not alone. That somewhere, someone reached out across light years and left a stone riddle for us to solve is its own kind of comfort. Or maybe the real wonder is this, that human hands carved passages so narrow, blocks so tight, rooms so hidden, that even today, with all our tools and science, they still keep us guessing. One day, maybe someone will slip a camera past the final stone door and find only more empty space, beautiful. Silent proof that the true builders were always here on Earth, under the same stars you drift beneath now. And so, we dream of hidden doors, of secret tombs, of messages from the sky. We dream because sometimes it's nice to think we are part of a mystery bigger than ourselves. And in the soft hush of your room tonight, with ancient stone pressing in on your imagination, the pyramids stand silent in the dark, still guarding secrets we may never fully unlock. Sleep now. Somewhere deep inside the Great Pyramid, a door remains closed. And behind it, maybe, the last great secret, or simply more stone, more proof that humans once dared to build eternity by hand. You have come this far into the drifting corridors of ancient rumor and cold stone. You have stood among the pyramids under a sky that never changes, yet always watches. Now, let your mind wander deeper, past the sand-scraped stones, past the hidden tombs and secret shafts, into the strange world of objects that should not exist, at least not in the accepted story of human history. Some call them anomalies, others say they are outright fakes, but for those who wish to believe these relics and carvings are whispers of a time, when humans knew more than they should, or when they were helped by something not entirely human at all. Close your eyes and imagine an ancient Egyptian temple, half lost to time and heat. You drift through its shadowed halls, fingers brushing hieroglyphs that crackle under centuries of dust. Your lantern light flickers on walls, carved with everyday scenes, farmers harvesting grain, nobles hunting wild birds along the Nile, until suddenly the images twist into something unsettling. Shapes that look like strange bulbs glowing with serpentine filaments, coils of wire snaking around hands held in reverence. Or there, what seems almost absurd, a shape that resembles a helicopter, its rotors frozen in stone. You have found yourself in the Temple of Hathor at Dendra. This place is the beating heart of a quiet but persistent puzzle. Etched into its walls are what many believe to be the Dendra light, an image that looks uncannily like a modern electric bulb. Mainstream archaeologists say it is nothing more than a lotus flower with a snake, a harmless symbol of creation and rebirth. But to those who believe in ancient lost technologies, it is proof. Proof that the ancient Egyptians wielded an understanding of electricity far beyond what dusty textbooks dare to mention. But how could they? Where would the power come from? Your lantern flickers, throwing shadows into the next corridor of thought. The so-called Baghdad Battery, found hundreds of miles away in the dry soil near Baghdad. A small clay jar, a copper cylinder nestled inside, an iron rod down the center. Fill it with an acidic liquid, some argue, and you have a simple galvanic cell, a primitive battery. Some dismiss it as a vessel for scrolls or sacred papyrus, but the possibility lingers. If people knew how to make a battery 2,000 years ago, what else did they know? These out-of-place artifacts are scattered like breadcrumbs across the ancient world. A spark plug in a rock, a mechanism from Greece. It tracks the stars with gears more delicate than a clockmaker's dreams. The Antikythera mechanism, culled from a shipwreck's cold embrace, turns in your mind now, its bronze gears frozen in time, suggesting that humans once had machines that mapped the heavens when much of the world still thought the earth was flat. Let your thoughts drift back to the pyramids, to those vast stone puzzles you have walked through all night. If such precision and alignment with stars was possible, if simple tools carved stones heavier than houses, could it be that the builders had access to some lost method? Some secret that never made it to papyrus or stone, or that was deliberately erased by sand and kings who rose to power by burying old truths. In the quiet of your imagination, you find yourself kneeling in a small chamber beneath the pyramid. Before you lies a simple box, perhaps a ceremonial chest, or perhaps a lost battery humming with potential in a time before our time. Beside it, an old carving shows a figure not quite human, too tall, head elongated, eyes too wide. You wonder if this is just another depiction of a god, an artistic flourish, or something else. A memory passed down through centuries, misunderstood by every generation that stumbled across it. Above ground, the wind sighs over the sand. Tourists come and go, snapping photos, arguing about theories. But here, alone in your dream, the pyramids seem to hum with an energy that no guidebook can quite explain. Maybe the pharaohs knew? Maybe the priests whispered it from father to son. A knowledge not to be carved in stone for fear it would bring ruin if the wrong hands found it. And so the out-of-place artifacts become a hidden language for those who want to listen. The Baghdad battery, the dendrolite, the gears of the Antikythera mechanism, strange metallic spheres found in ancient mines. Even the legends of Vimanas in India, flying machines described long before man ever lifted himself into the sky. Each piece alone is strange. Together, they become a foggy pattern that the curious can chase through sleepless nights. Is it proof? No. The skeptics remind you firmly, crossing their arms with polite smiles. Coincidence, misinterpretation, or outright hoax. But doubt can be as heavy as stone, and you find your mind wandering back to that hidden chamber beneath the pyramid. You hear whisper you cannot quite make out. A hum you feel more than hear. Perhaps these lost technologies are not lost at all, but waiting, buried beneath your feet, sealed behind walls you have not found yet, guarded by centuries of drifting sand and the slow, careful lies of time. Above you, the pyramids endure the ages, blind and watchful under the desert stars. Whatever secrets they hold, they do so in silence. They do not answer. They do not deny. They simply stand. And so you stand too, in the echo of these forbidden relics, eyes half closed as sleep pulls you closer. The lost technologies of ancient Egypt, the out-of-place artifacts, the forbidden knowledge. Maybe it is real. Maybe it is not. But tonight, in this slow unraveling dream, you can believe, just for a little while longer. Drift on, through the soft hum of a battery that should not be, under the glow of a stone-carved light bulb that never flickered, and let the ancient world carry you deeper into a darkness where secrets are safe, if only because no one dares to look too closely anymore. Now you have drifted from the hot sands of Egypt to the candlelit chapels of medieval Europe. Stone walls rise around you, damp with centuries of breath and prayer. You stand in the hush of a monastery, where monks once bent over parchment under flickering lamps, scratching secrets into vellum while storms rattled the wooden shutters. But tonight you are not here for prayers or scriptures. Tonight you come searching for shapes that do not belong, little clues left behind in paintings and frescoes, in delicate golden halos and broad brushstrokes. If you linger long enough in the quiet corners of medieval art, you may notice them too, the strange discs that hover behind saints. The bright orbs in crucifixion skies the objects that look suspiciously like flying ships, gliding through clouds that should hold nothing but angels. Let your mind settle on one painting in particular, the Madonna and Child with the infant St. John, painted centuries ago by an unknown hand. Look closely at the Virgin Mary, the soft curve of her head bent over the child, the gentle drape of her veil. And then in the distance, over her shoulder, a small dark shape in the sky, a rounded object, a disc. Beneath it, a man holds his hand up to shield his eyes while his dog barks at something no one else can see. Why is it there? Some say it is nothing more than a symbol, a representation of divine light, of the heavenly realm manifesting on earth. Others, however, lean closer to the faded pigments and whisper, what if it is exactly what it looks like? A craft, a ship in the sky, an ancient visitation, frozen forever in oil and egg yolk on wood. High above the cross, on either side, two odd shapes drift in the painted heavens. They are not simple clouds. Look closer. Each holds a human-like figure, hands gripping controls, faces turned back as if they pilot these strange pods across the sky. Some art historians call them allegories for the sun and moon, the passing of day and night, wrapped in the medieval artist's symbolic code. But to the curious mind, they look like astronauts encased in ancient capsules, caught watching the final moments of a man who had changed the world. What did the painters see? Were they playing with allegory? Or did they paint what they could not explain? Some believe these images are echoes, visual records of strange lights seen in the sky, comet tails mistaken for heavenly chariots, or stories carried by merchants from the east, tales of fiery wheels and flying shields that startled soldiers and frightened shepherds under medieval stars. Your footsteps echo through the cold nave. Another painting catches your eye, the Baptism of Christ, created by Art de Gelder in the late 17th century. Over the River Jordan, where the Baptist pours water on Christ's bowed head, hovers a disc-shaped cloud, rays of light streaming down in sharp beams. It is meant to be the Holy Spirit, a divine light, a burst of heavenly power. But the shape, the radiant spikes, the strange metal sheen, it draws in the dreamer's mind like a magnet. Was this just artistic convention? Or did the painter slip something deeper into the scene? Something whispered down through ancient stories. Ezekiel's fiery wheel, the chariots of the Book of Kings, the heavenly vehicles of old. The church is silent around you now. You hear only your breath and the faint echo of centuries-old choirs drifting through stone. You move from painting to painting, fresco to fresco, each revealing a new puzzle. Some show saints in golden chariots flying among the stars. Others reveal round ships among the clouds, while farmers toil below. There are even manuscripts describing shields of fire hovering above battlefields, bright spheres that vanish with a sound like thunder. Historians file these under religious symbolism, natural phenomena, misread comet sightings, or simply the vivid imagination of medieval minds that saw the sky as a battlefield between angels and demons. But even so, in the quiet of your sleepless hours, the mystery lingers. Were these shapes nothing but pious metaphors? Or did the monks and painters witness something that defied the logic of their age? Something they could only capture with brush and pigment and coded symbols? Outside the monastery, a storm gathers. Rain caps on stained glass, wind rattles the ancient roof. You stand in the nave, the flicker of a candle your only company. And you wonder, if you had lived then, a humble scribe or a wandering pilgrim, and seen a bright disk hovering silently above the fields, what would you have called it? An angel? A demon sign? A divine wheel? Maybe, in the hush of fear and wonder, you too would have bent to parchment, painting your vision into the corner of a page, a puzzle for another sleepless mind to find centuries later. The church bells toll softly in your dream. The paintings remain, colors faded by time but not erased. Some scholars insist they are nothing but the language of an age that spoke in symbols. But the believers, the seekers of hidden truths, they trace these images like secret maps. They say the visitors came before our time, drifting through ancient skies long before we had words for them. That they watched, perhaps guided, perhaps only observed, leaving their mark not in stone and metal, but in the art we now puzzle over when the night grows long. So you stand here a little longer, letting the candle burn lower, the shadows crawl higher. You follow the brushstrokes with your mind, the discs, the pilots, the shafts of light cutting through painted heavens. You drift among the saints and the watchers, your breath slow, your eyelids heavy. Maybe these medieval UFOs are only symbols. Maybe they are secrets, soft as a whisper, loud as a bell, if only we could learn to listen again. But tonight, they are yours to carry into sleep, your mind floating through centuries of painted mystery. Close your eyes. The discs hover still. The monks chant softly. The chapel fades into the shadows of your drifting dream. The candle gutters and dies in the ancient chapel behind you. You slip quietly through a side door, out into the velvet dark, your footsteps muffled by moss and mist. The world outside feels heavier now, as if the earth itself has secrets you have yet to unearth. You breathe the damp night air, and somewhere deep below your feet, in the hidden veins of the world, old stories begin to stir. These stories wind through the roots of mountains, coil through the deepest caves, and whisper that the earth you stand on is not as solid as you believe. For beneath the crust, they say, lies a hollow realm. Vast caverns, subterranean oceans, whole hidden kingdoms that never see the sun. And in these sunless halls dwell beings older than your oldest myths, the serpent men, guardians or exiles, depending on who you ask, their scales glistening like jewels in the dark. You walk deeper into this tale now. Imagine you are a traveler in the late 1800s, poring over yellowed maps and dog-eared journals in a flickering gaslit study. On the desk is a battered copy of The Coming Race by Edward Bulwer-Lytton, pages soft from anxious fingers. In it, you read of a hidden people beneath the surface, the Vrilya, wielding a strange force called Vril, living in vast subterranean cities of gleaming crystal. Some say the Vrilya inspired the legends of the serpent men, or perhaps they are one, and the same, just another mask worn by the ancient reptiles who slither through human nightmares. Close the book, and the world does not grow smaller. Instead, the legends branch outward like tree roots burrowing through stone. Ancient Mesopotamian myths tell of Ningshida, the lord of the good tree, a serpent deity, part man, part snake. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl glides across painted temples, a god who rises from the earth and returns beneath it. In each of these myths is a whisper. The serpent is a keeper of hidden knowledge, a girder of thresholds, a guide to realms unseen. Picture now the hollow earth as the believers see it, not just damp tunnels and blind fish, but a vast, secret civilization, shimmering domes lit by an inner sun, caverns wide as continents, echoing with chants in a language older than Babylon. And moving through this hidden empire are the serpent men, tall, scaled, eyes glinting like polished obsidian. They watch, patient and ancient, as empires rise and fall above them like ripples on a pond. Some say the serpent men are the true rulers of this planet, pulling at the strings of kings and priests through whispers that slip like smoke into dreaming minds. They are the hidden architects of forgotten technology, the reason ancient stonework fits so perfectly, the reason tunnels spiral beneath old temples that no modern surveyor can fully map. In the early 20th century, tales of the hollow earth gained a new breath. Explorers spoke of the mystic city of Agartha, the legendary entrance hidden among the frozen wastes of the poles. Some insisted the Nazis sent secret expeditions to seek the entrance to this subterranean world, hoping to find allies in the ancient race that dwells there. In these stories, the Serpent Men are more than monsters. They are a race of keepers, holding secrets of immortality, forbidden sciences, or doomsday weapons sleeping in crystal tombs. You stand now at the mouth of a great cave. The air that drifts up is warm, damp, scented with minerals and moss. Imagine stepping inside. The tunnel winds down and down, past ancient petroglyphs carved in twisting serpent shapes. The air hums faintly, the sound of water trickling over stone, the distant sigh of something vast and hidden breathing far below. You come to a cavern so wide it swallows your torchlight. Here, columns of limestone rise like the pillars of a forgotten temple. Pools of still water mirror your flickering flame, making it seem as if there are two of you, one above ground, one below, forever reflected. Perhaps you glimpse a flicker in the corner of your eye, a scale sliding over wet stone, an eye that blinks once and vanishes. Skeptics say these tales are nothing more than echoes of our fear of the dark, our primal terror of caves and what may crawl inside them. They point to the serpent as an archetype, a symbol of forbidden knowledge from the Garden of Eden to the staff of Hermes. The Serpent Men, they say, are shadows thrown by our own minds, made monstrous by the flickering torchlight of myth. Yet still the stories persist. Hollow Earth theorists gather scraps of folklore like breadcrumbs. Native American legends of ant people who sheltered humans from cataclysms beneath the earth. Tibetan monks who speak of Shambhala, a paradise hidden deep in the Himalayas. Occultists who claim that tunnels lace beneath our feet like veins, all leading to the same hidden heart where the Serpent Men dream. As you stand in this imagined cavern, listen to the silence. It is the silence of ages, of secrets coiled tightly like a serpent at rest. If you reach out your hand to the stone, perhaps you feel it, the faint vibration of something alive deep below. Maybe it is only the echo of water, or maybe it is something older than your species, waiting, watching, patient as stone. When you climb back up through the tunnel, blinking at the starlight above, the world feels different. Solid ground beneath your feet, yes, but softer now, as if it might crack open any moment to reveal hidden kingdoms below. You lie back in the grass, feeling the earth's slow heartbeat, wondering what dreams breathe in the darkness under mountains and seas. Do the Serpent Men truly guard ancient knowledge? Or are they just scales and shadows stitched together by our fear of what lies beneath? Tonight, it does not matter. In the drifting warmth of your sleep, they coil through your dreams, not as monsters, but as reminders that there are places you have not yet walked, and secrets that choose the darkness over the sun. And so you rest, eyes closed, as the world above spins on. Far below, the hollow earth waits, its hidden chambers echoing with stories older than your oldest fears. Sleep comes softly, carrying you deeper than any cavern could. Down and down, where the Serpent Men wait, patient as stone, breathing in the dark. The fire has burned low in your hearth. Outside your window, the wind whispers through the branches like an old story half remembered. Somewhere far from this warm room lies a patch of tangled wilderness, half swallowed by bramble and vine, where once, over 4 centuries ago, men, women, and children tried to carve a fragile foothold into the new world. Tonight, you drift backward through time to stand among them, to hear the hush of the pines, the slow lap of waves, the distant beat of drums deeper in the woods. It is 1587, and the world for you, a settler newly arrived on Roanoke Island, feels impossibly wide and raw. Your feet sink into sand that no English boot has ever pressed before. The trees here loom older than any church in London. The wind smells different, briny, heavy with the unknown. The ocean behind you is a promise and a threat. The forest before you, both refuge and riddle. You and 116 others have come here at the behest of Sir Walter Raleigh, who dreams of empire and profit and glory. He calls it the City of Raleigh, though it is no city, just a scattering of huts ringed by stakes, perched on the edge of wilderness and worry. The native Algonquian peoples watch from the shadows, their eyes bright with questions you do not speak the same tongue to answer. You look at the little fort, the roughly thatched roofs, the patch of garden already straining under unfamiliar sun and soil, and you wonder if the Queen's blessing will be enough to keep you safe. When Governor John White sails back to England for supplies, you watch his ship shrink to a dot on the horizon. He promises to return by winter's end. You stand on the beach long after the sails have vanished, the salt wind biting your skin, the hush of the surf whispering secrets you do not want to hear. Days turn to weeks, weeks to months. Winter creeps in like a thief, stealing warmth from your firewood, food from your meager stores. You watch the children's cheeks grow thin, the mother's eyes hollow. Some slip into the woods, hoping to barter with local tribes, hoping for maize, for fish, for mercy. Some do not return, and still, the sea remains empty. No sign of White's ship. England has turned its eyes inward, embroiled in wars and storms, while you wait at the edge of the world, more ghost than colonist. Years pass. When Governor White finally does return in 1590, he finds only the sigh of the waves and the hush of the forest. No warm fires greet him. No voices call from the stockade. The settlement is deserted. Houses dismantled, gardens wild, palisades weathered and silent under the sun. There is no sign of struggle, no sign of battle or slaughter. Just one word carved into a weathered post: Croatoan. White turns that word over in his mind like a prayer and a curse. The Croatoan, an island to the south, home to a friendly tribe. Did the settlers leave willingly? Did they sail away, or were they taken in? He finds no crosses carved into the trees, the prearranged sign of danger. No bones bleaching in the dunes. No answers on the wind. And so the mystery of Roanoke settles into the damp earth, into the whispering reeds and tangled vines, a question growing more stubborn as the centuries wear on. Some say the settlers joined the Croatoan people, their children merging into the tribe until the memory of England faded with each generation. Others insist darker forces were at work, that famine, disease, or hostile warriors ended the colony in blood and silence. A few, prone to wilder dreams, whisper of strange lights over the forests, of shapes slipping through the coastal fog, hints of something otherworldly sweeping the settlers away like grains of sand on the tide. In later years, explorers claimed to find traces, children with gray eyes among native villages, fair hair woven into braids, old words that echo oddly of English prayers. But no proof ever settles the matter. The lost colony remains true to its name, a ghost settlement swallowed whole by time, the forest growing thick and secret where English feet once stood. Tonight, you sit at your window and listen to the wind. It might be the same wind that brushed through those rough palisades on Roanoke Island, carrying away voices, laughter, a crackle of hearth fires that no record holds. You wonder what it felt like to hear Governor White's sails at last, only to realize they never came until it was too late. Did they leave willing footsteps in the sand, or did the forest close around them, the pines whispering secrets they took with them into the deep green silence? The lost colony of Roanoke endures because we need it to. We need mysteries more than we need answers sometimes. We need that vanished settlement on a spit of lonely sand to remind us how fragile our roots really are, how easily a community can vanish, leaving only a word carved into wood as its final breath. As you drift toward sleep, you see it, a clearing under moonlight, cabins leaning at odd angles, a child's doll half buried in soft earth. The surf hums beyond the dunes, and somewhere far in the pines, a drum beats slowly. Or maybe it is only your heart, echoing a riddle that refuses to fade. Rest now. The wind still whispers through Roanoke's trees, carrying the sighs of settlers long forgotten. And when the dawn comes, the colony remains lost, hidden just beyond the edge of history, waiting for footsteps that never quite arrive. The hush of the ocean, the distant bark of sea lions, the whisper of cypress trees, bent by centuries of salt wind. These are the sounds that cradle the rugged coastline of Big Sur. Along this wild stretch of California's cliffs, the Pacific crashes against stone in endless conversation. Travelers who wander here, alone on the winding trails, often feel something else too. A presence just beyond the mist, silent as a held breath. Tonight, you drift west to stand at the edge of that ocean, to peer into the gathering dusk and sense the watchers who stand so still they might be part of the stones themselves. Long before the word California was inked onto any map, the native Chumash people told stories of tall, silent shadows who watched from the ridges at sunset. They called them the Old Ones, beings who appeared at the edge of vision, watching but never approaching, silent as the cliffs themselves. When Spanish settlers first pressed inland, they too spoke of strange silhouettes on the high bluffs, dark figures taller than any man, draped in long cloaks and wide-brimmed hats, standing perfectly still in the dying light. Generations passed, but the stories did not fade. Local ranchers in the 1800s, tending their cattle along lonely trails, would pause at dusk and find themselves staring up at the ridgeline, where a tall figure would stand black against the sinking sun, unmoving and unbothered by the steep, crumbling slopes. They would blink, and the figure would vanish like smoke. Some brushed it off as a trick of the light, shadows cast by the rugged peaks and coastal fog. Others lowered their voices when they spoke of the dark watchers, refusing to name them too often, as if the very word might summon a glimpse of something they were not meant to see. Writers, too, felt their quiet presence. John Steinbeck, who grew up along these coasts, wrote of the watchers in passing, shadows who watched men but would vanish if approached too boldly. His son, Thomas Steinbeck, claimed to see them himself while wandering the hills, describing them as solemn silhouettes who made no sound and carried no threat, just a deep, unfathomable patience. Imagine now that you walk these same trails at twilight. The cypress branches creak overhead. The fog rolls in from the sea in long white fingers, slipping around the cliffs and gnarled roots. You hear only your own footsteps, the crunch of gravel, the soft sigh of the ocean far below. And then you feel it, that prickling at the back of your neck, the sense that you are no longer alone. You stop. You look up at the ridgeline. There, just at the edge of the fog, a figure stands. Tall, broad-shouldered, draped in what looks like a long cloak that shifts with the wind. A wide-brimmed hat shades a face you cannot see. It does not move. It does not raise a hand or turn away. It simply stands there, a quiet witness to your passing, as it has stood for centuries, watching generation after generation cross its lonely domain. You might lift your hand in greeting, a foolish instinct, but the watcher does not answer. Instead, as the fog thickens, the figure fades, dissolving back into the dusk as if it was never there at all. And so you walk on, heart steady but mind wondering. Who or what stands at the edge of these cliffs, so patient, so silent? Some say they are nothing more than illusions, shadows made by angled rock and setting sun. Others insist they are spirits, old beyond memory, guardians of these wild coastal lands that refuse to be fully tamed. Sometimes, when hikers vanish among these canyons, searchers wonder if the watchers saw it happen. Do they stand witness to every footstep lost to unstable cliffs, every hiker turned around in the fog, every whispered prayer that drifts up into the darkening sky? Or do they stand for something deeper, the part of our mind that conjures sentinels when we feel small beneath vast skies? The piece of us that needs to believe we are never truly alone. There are stories, too, of offerings. Travelers spooked by a sudden glimpse of a tall figure where no figure should be. Leave small gifts at the base of old oaks or tucked into rocky crevices. A handful of tobacco, a folded scrap of paper, a piece of bread or fruit. They say if you show respect, the watchers will watch kindly. If you ignore them or mock them, they may turn away, taking with them some thin thread of luck you did not know you needed. Yet never has anyone truly spoken with a Dark Watcher. They do not reveal themselves fully. They do not chase or threaten. They simply appear for a heartbeat or two, and vanish when the wind shifts and the fog thickens. They are reminders, perhaps, that the world is older than our maps, wilder than our roads, and that some corners prefer to remain half-glimpsed. Tonight, in your room far from those cliffs, you can almost hear the hush of the Big Sur surf. The cypress trees creak, leaning into centuries of salt air. And somewhere in your mind's eye stands a tall figure on a distant ridgeline, hat tilted low, cloak rippling like the restless ocean. It does not move. It does not come closer. It watches. And in some strange way, that watching brings a quiet comfort, a knowledge that some mysteries do not wish to be solved, only seen in passing, like a dream you half remember when you wake. Sleep now. Let the cliffs stand watch tonight. The Dark Watchers remain at their post above the Pacific, shadows on stone, older than memory, patient as the sea. In the frozen hush of the Canadian Arctic, where snowdrifts rise taller than men, and the northern lights dance like silent spirits, there lies a place whose story drifts in and out of truth, like mist over ice. The village of Anjikuni, once a humble cluster of Inuit homes by the still waters of a remote lake, now lives only in whispers, the site of one of the Arctic's strangest and most unsettling disappearances. The tale begins in November of 1930, deep into the lean season, when the cold swallows the land and the darkness stretches for weeks at a time. Joe LaBelle, a seasoned fur trapper who knew these northern trails as well as any man could, trudged toward Anjikuni Lake after days alone in the wilderness. LaBelle had visited the village before. He knew its small community of Inuit families who welcomed him with warm furs, hot tea, and news of the endless sky. The trapper expected the usual greetings: children peeking out of snow houses, dogs barking their shrill hellos, the drift of smoke from oil lamps and cooking fires. Instead, LaBelle stepped into a silence that felt too large for the little settlement. Snow muffled his boots. His breath formed clouds that vanished into the dusk. But the village itself, dozens of igloos and rough cabins clustered by the icy shore, lay lifeless. No footprints crisscrossed the fresh drifts. No dogs barked. There were no sounds at all, save for the wind pushing dry snow across the lake's frozen skin. LaBelle called out, once, then twice, voice echoing off the snow houses. No answer. He pushed aside the flap of the nearest igloo and stepped inside. The interior was just as he remembered. Furs spread for sleeping, stone lamps still filled with oil, half-finished meals frozen solid in tin pots. But the families who had cooked them were gone. No sign of struggle, no sign of hasty departure, just absence. He checked other homes, the same. Beds unmade, personal belongings untouched, rifles resting where they had been left. Outside, LaBelle found the sled dogs still tied up. But they, too, were dead, half buried in drifting snow. Their starvation so at odds with the orderliness of the empty village that LaBelle shivered despite the furs on his back. Panicked now, the trapper hiked to the nearest telegraph office and wired the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. A team of Mounties arrived days later to investigate the frozen ghost town. They, too, found the village deserted, untouched by any obvious violence. Food stores were stocked. Clothing and tools lay where they should. There were no signs that the families had fled in haste. No footprints leading out into the wilderness. No sled marks cutting fresh trails toward another camp. And yet every man, woman, and child was gone, vanished into an Arctic night that gives little back. Reports from the Mounties at the time, whether official or whispered between hardened northern men, added layers to the mystery. Some claimed that they found the village burial ground disturbed, graves dug up, stones rolled aside, as if the dead too had joined the missing. Others spoke of strange blue lights hovering over the lake at night, drifting silently above the ice like restless spirits or something stranger still. Skeptics have spent decades picking apart the tale. Some say Joe LaBelle exaggerated, or that he invented the entire story on a lonely trapline to keep company with his own fear of the empty tundra. Official RCMP records do not confirm every detail, and historians argue over whether the village even existed as LaBelle described. But here, in this soft corner of your night, the story lingers, because in the vast white silence of the Arctic, such vanishings feel possible. Imagine now that you stand where LaBelle once stood. The snow crunches beneath your boots. Overhead, the northern lights swirl in green and violet ribbons, whispering secrets no man can hold. The frozen lake stretches out in all directions, its surface so still it might be a mirror to the sky. Around you, the abandoned igloos huddle close for warmth they can no longer provide. You lift a flap, peer inside, a family's life paused in mid-breath. A child's carved toy. A pot half full of soup turned to ice. A fur-lined boot waiting for a foot that will never return. The wind picks up, carrying the taste of cold iron and old secrets. In the distance, you think you see movement. A flicker of white against white. A shape that might be a caribou or something else entirely. Some say the villagers were stolen by a sudden blizzard, lost in a storm that left no trace of their passage. Others whisper of an illness that came so swiftly and so strangely that the living simply fled into the night, hoping to outrun what they did not understand. But the oldest tales lean into the otherworldly. The Inuit have long spoken of spirits that walk between this world and the next, beings who dwell beneath the ice and sky, who sometimes call the living home to join them when the aurora burns too brightly. There are stories of sky ships, two glowing orbs that descend soundlessly onto lonely lakes, gathering those who live too close to the threshold between Earth and stars. Skeptics may scoff, but out here in the north, where the wind erases footprints within minutes, where the cold preserves secrets better than any vault, certainty is as thin as the winter sun. The tale of Anjikuni persists not because we know what happened, but because we do not. As you drift closer to sleep, picture that silent village by the lake, the way the snow drifts around its empty homes. The northern lights flicker, brushing your closed eyelids with green and purple fire. In this place where men once laughed, sang, and warmed themselves by tiny flames, only the hush of the Arctic remains, and the quiet certainty that some stories refuse to be buried under snow. Perhaps the villagers walked into the night to join ancestors waiting just beyond the veil. Perhaps they fled something that left no mark behind. Or perhaps they stepped aboard something not of this earth, drawn up into the swirling sky where the aurora sings its silent, cold hymn. Sleep now, and let the vanished village of Anjikuni keep its secrets. In the endless white, mystery drifts like snow, covering what it must, revealing what it will, when it wishes to whisper to those who listen closely in the dark. Beneath the heavy hush of the Appalachian hills, where night comes quickly, and the forests keep their secrets under layers of mist, there lies a small town whose name flickers like a ghost light in America. As strange folklore, Flatwoods, West Virginia. If you pass through these winding roads today, you might not know that on one autumn evening in 1952, this quiet place became the stage for one of the strangest encounters in UFO lore. A tale that still echoes when the fog curls low through the trees. It was September 12th, a night when the air smelled of burning leaves and distant storms. School had just begun again, and the hills were turning to gold and rust. In the late dusk, 3 boys, Edward May, his brother Fred, and their friend Tommy Heyer, were playing football in a grassy field near the Flatwoods Elementary School. The evening had grown deep, but they lingered in the gentle chill, tossing the ball beneath a sky just beginning to bruise purple and black. Then it came, a flash, a streak of fire overhead, trailing a tail that flickered red and orange. The boys froze, eyes wide as the object, bright, silent, impossibly fast, seemed to arc downward, dipping behind a hill crowned with dark trees. They watched as it disappeared beyond the ridge near an old farm belonging to a man named G. Bailey Fisher. The boys, hearts pounding with the thrill of the unknown, dropped the ball and ran for the May home. Kathleen May, Edward and Fred's mother, listened as the boys stumbled over each other's words, faces pale and eyes wide. Something had fallen, they said. Maybe a meteor, maybe a plane. A light had gone down behind Fisher's Hill. Determined to find out what it was, Kathleen gathered a flashlight and rallied the boys. They were joined by 2 more local children, Neil Nunley and Ronnie Shaver, and by Eugene Lemon, a young National Guardsman who lived nearby. Lemon brought his dog, hoping the animal's sharp senses would guide them through the dark woods. The group set off up the steep hill, flashlights bobbing like fireflies in the gathering night. The air smelled strange, sharp and metallic, tinged with something foul that stung the back of the throat. The closer they came to the crest of the hill, the thicker the mist grew, drifting in eerie curls across the path like something alive. At the top, they paused. Below them, in a shallow hollow near an old oak, they saw a pulsing red glow, not the crackling fire of a plane crash, nor the scattered pieces of a fallen meteor. This was different. The light was steady, almost breathing. And then, as their eyes adjusted to the gloom, they saw something that even now, more than 70 years later, no one can quite explain. Standing in the shadows by the glowing light was a figure, tall, impossibly tall, perhaps 10 feet high, though the mist made it hard to be sure. Its head was shaped like the spade of an ace of spades, pointed at the top, wide and round below. 2 fiery eyes, large and unblinking, glowed from within the hood, casting an eerie orange shimmer through the drifting fog. Below the head, the creature's body seemed clothed in dark, pleated folds, a kind of skirt or cloak that rustled without wind, metal-like but soft at its edges. Some said its arms were long and clawed, mechanical or insect-like, extending from the darkness of its form. It made no sound except for a low hiss, like steam escaping a hidden pipe. Lemon's dog barked once, then tucked its tail and bolted back down the hill, disappearing into the night. The group stood frozen, paralyzed by a dread that felt larger than fear. Kathleen May, the boys, the young guardsmen, all stared at the towering shape that stared back, its eyes burning like coals in the mist. Then, with a shudder, the thing began to glide, not walk, but drift toward them. The smell grew worse, an acrid, choking stench that made their eyes water and their throats tighten. Panic broke the spell. Eugene Lemon dropped the flashlight, grabbed Kathleen's arm, and they all turned and ran. Down the hill they tumbled, tripping over roots, breath catching in the cold air, hearts pounding as they crashed through the brush and undergrowth. Behind them, the glow faded into the dark, swallowed by the silent woods. When they reached town, breathless and pale, they spilled their story to neighbors, and eventually to local authorities. The sheriff and a deputy accompanied Eugene Lemon back to the site, but by then the mist had closed in, the glow was gone, and nothing remained but the smell, a lingering, bitter odor that clung to their clothes and hair. News of the encounter spread quickly, carried by local radio and then the Associated Press. The Flatwoods Monster, they called it, or the Braxton County Monster, after the county in which Flatwood sits. Reporters arrived, notebooks in hand, skeptical but intrigued. Some blamed it on a meteor shower that had crossed the East Coast. That same night, maybe the boys had seen a shooting star and let their imaginations run wild. Others wondered if it was an owl perched on a limb, startled by the flashlights, its eyes reflecting red in the beam. The rustling cloak? Perhaps the branches of the oak swaying in the wind. But the people of Flatwoods knew their own hills and woods. They knew the difference between an owl and a towering, drifting figure crowned with burning eyes. For years after, some locals claimed to find signs, scorched grass, odd oil-like residue on tree trunks, strange marks on rocks. The accounts blurred as the story passed from mouth to mouth, becoming part of West Virginia's folklore. Skeptics point out that hysteria can bloom quickly in small towns, especially in the dark, especially when children are involved. But believers hold that something landed that night, something that did not belong to the ridges and hollows of Appalachia. Was it a visitor from the stars? A military experiment gone awry? Or something stranger still, something that brushed up against our world before drifting back into the dark between the stars? Even now, Flatwoods leans gently into its legend. A small museum holds scraps of newspaper clippings and hand-drawn sketches of the monster. Souvenir shops sell t-shirts and tiny figurines with spade-shaped heads and glowing eyes. And every September, when the leaves start to turn and the nights grow long again, curious travelers gather on that same hill, hoping to glimpse a flicker of orange light in the mist. As you close your eyes tonight, drift for a moment to that Appalachian hill. Smell the fallen leaves, damp with evening dew. Hear the hush of wind through the trees, the distant call of an owl that might be nothing more than an owl, or might be something watching, waiting. Picture the children's wide eyes, the mother's steady hand gripping the flashlight, the guardsman's breath catching in his throat. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a shape stands still, tall, spade-headed, eyes flickering like embers behind a veil of drifting fog. It does not move. It does not speak. But it is there, waiting for the curious, the brave, or the foolish to climb the hill once more. Sleep now. Let the Flatwoods monster keep its watch beneath the star-scattered sky. In the hush of your own room, safe under the blankets, remember that some stories come alive only when the lights are low, and the hills are quiet, and that, sometimes, the truth is not nearly as comforting as the dark. Long before we launched rockets skyward or peered into the dark with giant telescopes, we turned our eyes to the heavens and asked old questions. Where did we come from? Who gave us fire, language, and the secrets of the sky? The stories passed down on clay tablets, stone carvings, and whispered myths suggest that our ancestors did not always believe they were alone beneath the stars. Somewhere in the folds of dusty scrolls and desert winds lies a theory that has both fascinated and divided minds for over a century. The theory of ancient astronauts. It whispers that the gods of old, those feathered serpents, winged giants, and shining beings that stepped down from the sky, were not gods at all, but visitors. Travelers from other worlds, teachers, engineers, colonists. Close your eyes for a moment and drift back thousands of years. Picture the vast plains of Mesopotamia, where rivers coil like serpents through fertile mud. There, the Sumerians built cities of ziggurats and brick. They carved stories into stone, stories of the Anunnaki, beings who came from the heavens to shape humankind from clay, breathe life into it, and pass down the arts of writing, astronomy, and kingship. The word Anunnaki means those who came from the heavens. To some, this was simply myth, a poetic way to say that kings and priests drew their power from the divine. But to others, it suggests a more literal arrival. Did these beings step from a chariot of fire, descending on pillars of smoke and flame? Were they travelers from some distant star, bringing knowledge that seemed like magic to early eyes? In the middle of the last century, writers like Erich von Däniken and Zechariah Sitchin pored over these tablets, looking for the fingerprints of visitors. They saw not gods, but astronauts, ancient engineers whose ships thundered down to Earth, whose presence ignited the spark that turned nomadic tribes into cities of stone. They pointed to the sudden leaps in Sumerian mathematics, astronomy, and monumental architecture. Could these really have bloomed from nothing? Or did someone plant the seed? Travel further west, across deserts and seas, until you stand at the base of the pyramids of Egypt. Beneath the blazing sun, these stone mountains rise from the sand, precise and heavy, defying time and erosion. The ancient Egyptians left behind no blueprints for how they moved stones, weighing tons across miles of desert. They told tales of divine builders, gods who whispered the secrets of geometry, alignment, and celestial order. The shafts inside the Great Pyramid align with stars, Orion's belt, Sirius, as if the structure itself were a message to the sky. Some wonder, were these alignments mere acts of worship, or signals meant for someone watching from above? Look to the Americas, to the Nazca lines of Peru. Enormous figures etched into the earth, visible only from the air. A hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, and long, ruler straight lines that stretch for miles across the desert floor. How did ancient people make these lines so precise? When flight was a dream, no human had yet dreamed. Some say the lines were offerings, visible only to sky gods. Others wonder if they were landing strips, signs for something that soared overhead in ships of gleaming metal. In the Andes, the legends of Viracocha, the bearded god who came from across the sea, taught the people to build, and then vanished into the waves, echo the same mystery. Feathered serpents appear again in Mesoamerican myth. Quetzalcoatl, the plumed god who brought maize and wisdom before ascending back to the stars. If you listen to the Hopi people of North America, they tell stories of the Kashinas, spirit beings who descended from the clouds to guide and watch over the people. Some Kashinas arrived in flying shields, spinning like wheels of light in the sky. They taught ceremonies, dances, and the rhythms of the seasons. To the Hopi, these were sacred visitors, guardians of harmony. But to the ancient astronaut theorist, they sound like travelers from a distant world. Skeptics counter these stories with more earthly explanations. Myths are metaphors, symbols for the power of nature and the wisdom of ancestors. The sudden leaps in knowledge, they say, come not from alien visitors, but from human genius sparked by need, hunger, and curiosity. What seems impossible to us now was possible then, because our ancestors were clever and determined, pushing stones up ramps, watching the stars with naked eyes, passing secrets down through generations of builders and priests. Yet the theory persists because we are a species that loves mysteries more than answers. We look up at the stars and see infinite possibilities. Other worlds, other civilizations, other eyes looking back. We wonder if those eyes looked down once before, guiding hands that carved temples, charted the courses of planets, and whispered prophecies in ancient tongues. The most tantalizing puzzle pieces come not just from myth, but from the stones themselves. Cyclopean walls in Peru, made of stones so precisely cut they fit together without mortar, surviving centuries of earthquakes. Or the colossal statues of Easter Island, watching the Pacific with empty eyes, some half buried, as if waiting for someone to return and lift them upright again. Some believers in ancient astronauts look to India's Vimanas, flying chariots described in Hindu epics like the Mahabharata. These texts speak of battles in the sky, of weapons that sound eerily like nuclear blasts, of gods who flew between the stars in machines that shone like the sun. To the faithful, these are allegories, myths to explain thunder and lightning. To the theorists, they are descriptions of a technology so advanced it could only have come from elsewhere. But even if there were visitors, beings who crossed the gulfs of space to touch our young civilizations, what did they leave behind? If they taught us to build, where did they go? Some say they left clues buried in Forbidden's archaeology, impossible gears, out-of-place artifacts, strange alloys found in layers of Earth too old for our history books. Mainstream science finds little proof. No ships entombed beneath ziggurats. No star maps etched into pyramid walls that point to uncharted galaxies. And yet, the stories remain, repeated around campfires and museum exhibits, lingering in late-night radio whispers and dog-eared books. They live because they feed the oldest, deepest hope that we are not alone, that the spark of wonder within us is shared by other minds, other hands, somewhere in the vast ocean of stars. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, imagine the flicker of torchlight on ancient stone, the hush of chanting priests in a temple lost to sand. See a figure, tall and cloaked in light, stepping from a craft that hums and glows against the desert dark. Imagine it reaches out a hand, not to rule, but to teach, to lift us one step closer to the sky. Perhaps our ancestors did not build alone. Or perhaps they did, guided only by their dreams, by the constellations that burn above us still. Either way, when you next look at the stars, remember that the stories we tell about them are as old as our first questions, our first fires, our first longing to rise and see what lies beyond. Sleep now. Let the ancient astronauts keep their secrets among the tablets and pyramids and silent deserts. Rest knowing that the greatest mystery is not whether they came, but that we still wonder eyes upturned, hearts open to the possibility that the stars have always been watching us. And maybe, just maybe, we were never truly alone. When the last light of the evening fades and the hum of the world quiets, there is a hush that drifts through government hallways and locked archives. A hush thick with secrets that some say were never meant for ordinary eyes. Among the murmurs and redacted pages lies one of the most enduring pieces of the alien puzzle, the tale of Majestic 12. Settle into your pillow, listen to the gentle pull of your breath, and imagine yourself in America in the years after World War II. The world is raw from conflict, yet bursting with a new, uneasy optimism. Rockets once built to carry bombs are being studied to reach the stars. The nuclear age has dawned, and so, many say, has the age of visitors. It begins in 1947, a year that would become a cornerstone of modern UFO lore. That summer, a strange object fell from the sky near Roswell, New Mexico. What was found there? Weather balloon, experimental craft, or something altogether unearthly, has been debated endlessly ever since. Witnesses told of debris that shimmered like metal but bent like foil, of small bodies hidden away by men in uniform, of trucks leaving the desert under cover of darkness. Years later, out of the shadows of this legend, a name emerged, Majestic 12. According to documents that first surfaced in the 1980s, mysteriously mailed to a filmmaker and UFO researcher, Majestic 12, or MJ-12, was a secret committee of scientists, military leaders, and government insiders formed by President Truman himself. Their alleged task? To investigate and conceal evidence of extraterrestrial visitors, recover crashed craft, and study the beings who piloted them. The documents, stamped "Top Secret Magic Eyes Only," listed 12 men, high-ranking generals, respected scientists, and intelligence officers. Their mission, if you believe the papers, was to ensure that whatever fell from the sky in Roswell, or anywhere else, would be hidden, studied, and perhaps one day harnessed, far from the prying eyes of a public not ready for such truths. But where did these files come from? Critics call them forgeries, elaborate hoaxes cooked up to feed conspiracy theories. Official agencies denied their authenticity, yet the story of Majestic 12 refused to die. It lived in the whispered corridors of UFO conferences and dog-eared files passed between believers, and in the late-night crackle of radio shows, where the question is not whether we are alone, but how much our governments know and hide. As you drift deeper into this story, imagine old file cabinets in dimly lit basements, shelves stacked with boxes, marked with codes no outsider could decipher. Somewhere in these hidden rooms, according to believers, lie not just files, but wreckage, pieces of otherworldly metal, slivers of technology beyond our science. And if the rumors are true, bodies too, beings preserved in cold chambers, studied under flickering fluorescent lights by scientists who traded their silence for a lifetime of secrets. Roswell was just the beginning, they say. Throughout the Cold War, reports of unidentified craft streaking through American skies reached the highest levels. Pilots chased lights that defied gravity. Radar operators tracked blips that appeared and vanished in the blink of an eye. Sometimes, men in dark suits would appear at witnesses' doors, asking polite questions with hard eyes, collecting photographs, negatives, stories, leaving behind silence and doubt. In 1952, amid a wave of sightings, the U.S. Air Force launched Project Blue Book, an official investigation to examine thousands of UFO reports. Publicly, Blue Book concluded there was nothing to see, no evidence of extraterrestrials. Privately, many believe it was only a cover, a way to keep the curious occupied, while Majestic 12 and its successors did the real work in secret bunkers and labs far from prying eyes. Stories grew stranger in the decades that followed. In the deserts of Nevada, a patch of land known as Area 51 rose from rumor to legend. There, surrounded by fences and signs warning against trespassers, strange shapes flicker above the dry lake bed. Whispers claim that beneath the runways and hangars lie underground chambers, where captured craft are reverse engineered, where human hands attempt to coax secrets from engines not made on this earth. For every photo that surfaces, for every grainy video of a saucer darting through the clouds, there is a denial, a weather balloon, a drone, a trick of light and mind. Yet the stories persist, because people persist in telling them. A pilot's confession, a leaked memo, a blurry photograph slipped under a motel door. Pieces of a puzzle that may never be complete, yet feel too compelling to dismiss entirely. Consider the countless whistleblowers who have come forward over the years, their voices sometimes trembling, sometimes defiant. Some claim they worked on craft that floated without wings. Others say they handled metal that healed itself when torn. A few speak of meetings with beings whose eyes were black and deep as the night sky. Each testimony adds a layer to the myth, or the truth, depending on where you choose to stand. Skeptics urge caution. They remind us that human memory is fragile, that hoaxes flourish in the fertile soil of fear and wonder. Documents can be faked, photos staged, confessions bought, or dreamed up by minds eager to find meaning in the shadows. And yet, not all who chase these secrets are wide-eyed dreamers. Some are decorated officers, sober-minded engineers, and quiet bureaucrats with nothing to gain from telling tales that brand them as cranks. The beauty of the Majestic 12 legend is that it sits perfectly at the intersection of power and the unknown. It suggests that the story of UFOs is not only about what flies in the sky, but about who controls the narrative here on Earth. If true, it means that the greatest secrets are not hidden among the stars, but buried in filing cabinets, guarded by silence, and protected by the fear that some truths are too big for us to hold. Tonight, as you drift on the edge of sleep, imagine a lonely airfield in the desert, the stars above it sharp and cold. Picture a group of men gathered in a windowless room, bent over photographs of scorched wreckage and notes written in a language no human tongue has spoken. See them signing forms stamped Majestic 12, their pens scratching out truths that will never see the light of day. Perhaps these are only stories, shadows on the walls of our curiosity. Or perhaps even now, somewhere beneath a locked vault door, the secrets of our visitors wait for the right moment to emerge. Until then, they rest like you do now, hidden, silent, waiting in the dark. In the hush of the small hours, when the roads are empty and the hum of daily life has gone still, Some people lie awake with a peculiar fear. It is not the fear of burglars or storms, but a quieter, stranger dread that in the deepest folds of sleep they are not alone, that in the moments when the mind drifts, doors open that they never meant to unlock. The stories of alien abductions are as old as the modern UFO age itself, woven into the fabric of small towns, back roads, and lonely farmhouses. They are tales whispered in support groups and scribbled in journals hidden in bedside drawers. If you listen long enough, you begin to notice the pattern. An eerie rhythm, the same beats repeated in different voices, different towns, different beds. It often begins with a light, a strange, pulsing glow through the window or above a quiet road. The abductee feels frozen, yet impossibly calm, as if wrapped in a fog that makes the impossible seem mundane. Then there is a sense of floating, through walls, up into the sky, into rooms not found on any earthly blueprint. Take, for instance, the story of Betty and Barney Hill, the couple who, in 1961, were driving home through the dark mountains of New Hampshire when they saw a craft hover above the trees. They arrived home later than they should have, with strange burns on the trunk of their car and an unsettling blank in their memories. Under hypnosis months later, both spoke in trembling voices of gray-skinned beings with large black eyes, who examined them in sterile rooms under a bright, unnatural light. Skeptics call it sleep paralysis, a trick of the brain caught between dreaming and waking. But those who have felt the cold metal table beneath them, or seen the tall shadows around their bed, say otherwise. They speak of small, soft hands that glide over their skin, needles that slip beneath the flesh, whispers in languages they do not know, but somehow understand. These stories span continents and generations. A farmer in Brazil who woke in a field with strange marks burned into his chest. A housewife in England who saw tiny figures at the foot of her bed while her husband slept on, undisturbed. Children who speak of nighttime visitors with eyes like mirrors, who promise they will not remember, yet somehow a memory slips through the cracks, surfacing in dreams and fragments. Abduction accounts often share unsettling details. Lost time, triangular marks left behind like a signature, and a sense of being watched long after the lights vanish. Some abductees describe being shown visions, burning cities, broken forests, dying oceans, as if their captors are trying to send a warning, or perhaps plant an idea. Others say they were told they have a role to play, that something in their blood or mind connects them to these beings who come and go like ghosts. For many, the aftermath is the hardest part. They wake with headaches, bruises, or a sense of deep violation they can't explain. Some lose jobs, friends, even family, as they struggle to make sense of the impossible. They attend support groups in church basements and town libraries, circling chairs where they find, at last, the only people who will listen without laughing. Psychologists offer explanations: sleep disorders, false memories, suggestible minds tangled in a web of cultural myth. And yet, the abductees themselves are not always the sort you'd expect. They are truck drivers, teachers, nurses, pilots. They are people who do not want attention. They want sleep, peace, normalcy. But when they close their eyes, the visitors come. Some researchers believe that if these experiences are real, then perhaps the abductions are not experiments at all, but a kind of silent diplomacy, a cold, distant conversation between species. The beings gather genetic samples, watch how we live, learn how we break and heal. Some even claim hybrids walk among us, children born of two worlds, carrying secrets in their cells that could one day change what it means to be human. Imagine for a moment lying in your bed tonight, the darkness heavy around you. Outside, a breeze rustles the trees. A dog barks in the distance. Then, a flicker of light through the curtains. A humming you feel more than hear. The air feels wrong, thick, charged like before a thunderstorm. You try to move, but your body will not obey. Shadows gather at the corners of your vision. Not men in suits this time, but figures thin and tall, heads larger than yours, eyes endless and without mercy or malice, just watching, just working. It is a scene painted and repainted in countless testimonies. Sometimes the abductors appear robotic, like living mannequins. Other times they seem curious, even gentle, though their intentions are unreadable. The rooms they take you to are always the same, bright, cold, featureless, but for metal tables and instruments whose purpose you can only guess at. You are not alone, but you feel more alone than ever before. A specimen under glass, a question with no answer. And then, as suddenly as it began, it ends. You are back in your bed, the clock blinking a time that makes no sense. Hours have passed, but the house is still. The neighborhood sleeps on, unaware that anything strange ever visited your street. You might dismiss it as a nightmare, until you find the bruise shaped like 3 dots on your wrist. Until the dreams come back the next night, and the night after. For some, the fear becomes a part of life, a low hum under the daily grind. They cover their windows in tinfoil, install security cameras, keep lights on all night. Some move far from cities to escape the lights in the sky. Yet the stories follow them, like distant footsteps that never grow nearer, never vanish completely. And what of the world's governments, the same ones rumored to keep alien wreckage under lock and key? Officially, they dismiss these stories as nonsense, a modern folklore for an anxious age. But some believe the truth is more complicated, that abductions are watched, maybe even permitted, in exchange for technology or knowledge too dangerous to refuse. Whispers claim there are secret agreements, silent treaties between visitors and those who hold power, bargaining chips traded in the dark while the rest of us sleep. Skeptics scoff, but the stories endure. They are woven into books, late-night radio shows, internet forums, buzzing with coded confessions. They live in the quiet confessions of strangers, who cannot help but speak when they find someone willing to listen, someone who wants to laugh when they say, "I woke up and they were there." Tonight, as you slip deeper into the soft pull of sleep, remember that not every strange noise outside your window is just the wind. Not every flicker of light is an airplane passing overhead. Some things drift through our lives like phantoms, visitors who come when the world is stillest, when your mind is most open, when you are most defenseless and unguarded. Close your eyes. Breathe. The world you wake to in the morning will be the same. But somewhere, maybe not so far away, there are others who drift the same skies you see when you look up. And sometimes, when the hour is right, they drift a little closer. Long before flying saucers hovered above lonely roads, long before modern cameras tried to capture points of light slipping through clouded skies, there were the walls, the old stone, the sun-baked clay, the weathered canvas of human history. And on these walls, our ancestors painted what they saw, or perhaps what they wanted us to see. Across the world, in caves, temples, and tombs, strange figures peer back at us. Wide eyes, elongated heads. Beings that stand apart from the people painted around them. Neither man nor beast, yet somehow both. Are they gods, spirits, or something else entirely? To believers in ancient alien theories, these forgotten murals are more than art. They are evidence. In the caves of Val Camonica, high in the Italian Alps, ancient carvings stretch back thousands of years. Among the deer and hunters etched into the rock is a figure wearing what looks, uncannily, like a helmet, a dome that bulges around the head, attached to lines that trail down its body like wires. Some say it's a ritual mask or an artistic flourish. Others see a visitor, a being in a suit not unlike the ones our own astronauts wear today. Travel to Tassili and Nasir in the heart of the Sahara, and you find more secrets etched in stone. The so-called Great Martian God towers over smaller figures in ancient cave paintings, a colossal being with round, hollow eyes, its limbs elongated, its presence commanding. The local tribes say it depicts a spirit, a guardian of the people who painted it. But for those who peer closer, it looks strangely familiar, like the grays described by abductees lying awake in the dark. And then there are the Vimanas, the flying chariots of Hindu mythology. Ancient Sanskrit texts speak of these great machines that carried gods and kings across the skies, powered by engines and metals unknown to ordinary men. The tales are rich with detail, descriptions of aerial battles, of vessels that could soar, hover, and disappear into the clouds at will. Some historians see metaphor, poetic imagination taken to the sky. But ancient astronaut theorists see blueprints, fragments of knowledge from visitors who descended when the world was still young. In Egypt, the Temple of Seti I at Abydos hides what some claim is the strangest evidence of all. Hieroglyphs that seem to show a helicopter, a submarine, even a modern jet. Scholars explain this as an illusion, overlapping carvings created when old inscriptions were replaced with new ones. But for believers, the idea is irresistible. What if the pharaohs glimpsed machines far beyond their time, granted secrets that faded into stone and rumor? The Nazca lines in Peru draw similar wonder. Etched into the dry earth centuries ago, these massive geoglyphs can only be fully seen from the sky. Sprawling shapes of hummingbirds, spiders, and strange geometric patterns that stretch for miles. Why would a people with no means of flight carve messages that only the heavens could read? Some say they were offerings to gods in the clouds. Others imagine them as landing strips, cosmic guideposts for ships that drifted down from distant stars. Even the biblical stories are not immune to reinterpretation. The prophet Ezekiel's vision, a great wheel within a wheel, gleaming like polished metal, spinning, and roaring above the earth, has been dissected by ancient alien enthusiasts for decades. What if his vision was not divine metaphor, but a craft, a visitor that cracked the sky open for one frightened shepherd to see? But perhaps the greatest mystery is why these echoes persist, from the petroglyphs of Australia's Wandjina with their round, featureless faces to the Mayan carvings that show kings riding what some see as rockets' flames trailing from beneath them. Why did so many cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, paint and carve such similar shapes? Skeptics point to simpler answers. Dreams, visions, the human tendency to find familiar shapes where none exist. Ancient people were astronomers and artists, storytellers who wrapped the unknown in myths of sky gods and star messengers. The helmets might be crowns, the strange eyes an artistic exaggeration. We want to see visitors because we wish to believe we are not alone, because loneliness on this spinning rock in a dark, endless sky is too heavy to bear for long. Yet the questions linger in quiet museums and wind-blown ruins. Perhaps the truth is somewhere between myth and stone, a memory passed down in stories painted on walls, so that one day far from the desert or jungle where they were carved, we would stand in a gallery and wonder, who were they drawing? What did they see? And maybe it does not matter if it was real or imagined. The art endures, a testament to our longing to touch the sky, to glimpse something greater than ourselves. If visitors did come, they left no metal ships or alien bones, only whispers in pigment and chisel strokes, footprints that vanish with the rain. So when you next walk through an ancient temple or gaze at a cave painting behind museum glass, look closer at the figures on the wall. Trace the lines with your eyes, the outstretched arms, the eyes too large for the faces that hold them. Imagine the artist, brush in hand, sitting by flickering firelight. Did they see something no one else did? Or did they dream it, just as we dream, every time we tilt our heads back and watch the stars? And so, dear dreamer, we drift to the end of this long, quiet wander through the hidden corners of the alien question, the stories, the shadows, the signs left in stone and sky. Whether you believe in little gray visitors, in ancient watchers, or only in the restless shape of the human imagination, there is a quiet comfort in the mystery. Tonight, as you close your eyes, let your thoughts drift far beyond this room, this city, this spinning blue world. Imagine the old painters brushing shapes on cave walls, the lonely farmers who stared up at unfamiliar lights, the pilots who glimpsed discs dancing just out of reach. Let the questions hover gently in your mind, not to frighten, but to remind you how vast and strange our universe is. Sleep softly now. Let the sky hold its secrets for another night. When you wake, the world will be waiting. The sun will rise. The roads will hum with life once more. And somewhere beyond the morning light, the stars will keep their watch, the same as they always have. Rest well, dreamer. Good night.